Did you ever wonder if the fact that we go to sleep tired and wake up with tons of refreshed new energy shows or hints to something? This is Jewish Life 101. Welcome to Jewish Life 101, the podcast where we tackle any topic from a Jewish perspective, from the way that a Jew would look at it. Today's topic is waking up. This is the third part of a series about a sentence that we say the first thing in the morning as soon as we wake up, according to Judaism. I would like to suggest that before listening to this episode, if you haven't already, to listen to the previous two episodes, as they're not 100% necessary, but will add a lot of understanding to this current episode. As we are giving a couple of explanations, and in the first episode, we said 4 explanations. In the second episode, we brought a 5th foundational explanation, and we started re-explaining the 4 explanations in a completely new way from a completely new light. Last time we did the first explanation. This time, we're going to do the second explanation. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone that you don't need any background information in order to be able to listen to this podcast. Anything that we say that may not be understood, we will point out that we will probably explain it a different time. Let's get started. The second explanation that we had on this sentence, called Moda'ani, is the fact that when we go to sleep, it's like 1/60th of death. Therefore, when we wake up, it's like a mini resurrection. Therefore, the concept of sleeping hints to the concept of resurrection. And that's what we say in the sentence, and I'll translate it for everyone. For giving me back my soul, much is your faith. Because you give me back my soul every single day, which is similar to the resurrection, therefore I can have much faith in you, I can have much faith in God, that He will eventually give me back my soul by the upcoming resurrection. Now, in this, we can ask that it's a very far-fetched hint from sleeping and waking up versus someone who passes and later gets resurrected. For 2 reasons. The first reason is very simply that sleeping is only 1/60th of death. So it's like a very, very small portion, very, very big hint. But the main reason, the second reason why they're not similar is if you go back a step and you see what happens when someone goes to sleep and wakes up versus when someone passes and eventually becomes alive again. What happens when someone sleeps and wakes up is that the soul, when it goes to sleep, disconnects from the body, meaning that the energy that it gave the body, the abilities that it gave the body, is not in a revealed way in the body, like we explained in our episode Dreams 2 in the past. And when he wakes up, it reconnects. The soul reveals his energy, reveals his abilities into the body, and therefore the body is able to move, act, talk, feel in a more active, in a more proper way. When someone passes, in order to properly explain this part, we're going to explain the flip side. When someone is created, when someone's born, what happens? Originally, their body was a pile of earth. And originally, their soul, like we said in the last 2 episodes, the essence of the soul, where it was originally, was connected, unified with God Himself. So they're in completely different planes. One of them is the most spiritual of spiritual, and the other one is the most physical of physical. They do not have any common middle grounds to be able to connect on. Therefore, in order for someone to be born, in order for someone to have body and soul together, the body needed to be formed into the way that it looks, that every single limb is able to accept the ability that it's being given to. For example, the eye is accepting the ability to see, which is a very refined ability, and therefore the eye is a very refined part of the body. And the soul had to go down into different worldly concepts until it is able to come all the way down into this world. For example, the soul had to enclose itself into logic, into the concept of emotions. Those parts are the more external and the more low parts of the soul. And then they're eventually able to meet in the middle and connect. When someone passes away, we see by the body clearly that the body goes back to being earth. So too happens to the soul. The soul goes back to its source. It goes back to where it was originally. On that end, it's a lot more than going to sleep. But going to sleep, they both exist in their current form. how someone is when they're alive. They're just not connecting in the fullest way. Over here, when someone passes, their forms drop completely. And when the resurrection happens, their forms are remade. So they're being made anew. It's not just that the soul is re-revealing itself. It's just a revelation. It's a whole renewal. So there's no connection between A and B. So why are we saying that this one hints on that one? This one is a revelation. That one is making something. This one's like turning on the light. That one's like building a car. They're not connected. To explain this, we're going to bring in another concept. This concept we will probably explain a different time, even more in depth than we will right now. It's a topic for itself. But there's a concept that the world is constantly created. Originally in existence, there was just God. And then God created the world from nothing. So the default is that there's nothing, and then the world was created from that. So the world is a novelty. There should be just nothing, and the world is a novelty that now exists. Now, just like any novelty, something has to be actively making its existence happen. For example, imagine you walked into a room and there was a stone flying in the room. Scientists would immediately gather around the stone and start studying it and try to figure out, why is it flying? Why are they looking into this? Why are they assuming there's a reason that it's flying? Because it's a novelty. As far as we know, the default of a stone is to fall. So if it's flying, it must be that there's some force keeping it up. And as soon as that force is taken away, it must fall again. Because the novelty only stays in this novel version if there's something keeping it there. So too over here, if the world shouldn't be here, the world shouldn't be existing, there should only be God, then there needs to be something constantly renewing and keeping up the existence of the world. So every single moment is really renewing the body, the soul, and everything else. Now on this we can ask that if so, if every single second is a renewal, then that means that every single second is a hint to the concept of the renewal that will happen by the upcoming resurrection. Why is it that specifically when we wake up, do we thank God and do we mention the fact and acknowledge the fact of the upcoming resurrection, because that moment hints to the concept of being renewed? Seemingly, every single moment hints. Either we should be saying it constantly or we shouldn't say it at all. Why is it connected to being woken up, to waking up in the morning? The answer is that that's because that moment shows on it. It hints to it. Every single moment we're being renewed. But do you feel it? Do I feel it? We don't feel it. It's not recognizable in the world in the slightest. We feel from our perspective that we're constantly going. The world is constantly going. The world's constantly here. Even if it didn't exist at one point, it won't exist at one point. But in the middle, it's one continuous existence. That's how we feel, and that's how everything in the universe feels. In the night, there's a change both in the world and in an individual. In the world, there's the change that, for the very most part, all activities pretty much just calm down. Things kind of stop. The world's kind of like half speed. And then in the morning, when people start waking up, when everything starts getting moving again, when people go to work, it's as if it's a renewed energy. So too in the person, throughout the day, they get weaker and weaker and weaker, and then they go to sleep, and it's kind of like a cutoff point. And then when they wake up, it's a renewed point. Therefore, that's hinting to the concept that we need to constantly be renewed. We're constantly going towards non-existing, and then we're renewed to re-exist. So the main point is, waking up is the moment which shows renewal. We have renewed energy. The world has a renewed hustle and bustle, and that hints on the upcoming resurrection. But even then, the same way that in our original trying to explain it between someone waking up regularly, how we first understood it, and resurrection, that was just the soul giving a revelation, and over here it's actually renewal. So too by us. When someone wakes up, even with new energy, or when the world continues going, the world does not change, and the person, he's getting some new energy, but he's the same person. So it doesn't really fully hint to the fact that we're being renewed. Or at least it doesn't seem to be fully hinting to the fact that we're being renewed. You could just say that it's the concept that we go to sleep, we wake up, we get new energy. Or you could just say it's about energy, not our general existence. Most of us are still perfectly fine. To answer this, we're going to bring in a rule that there is in Judaism, that God wanted us to recognize his greatness. So he put different things that happen spiritually, he put a parable or an example of that case in this world. Concepts that are somewhat relatable to the world, such as there's a spiritual version of intellect, their counterpart in the physical world is almost the exact same thing, just physical. It's the physical counterpart of this spiritual concept. And therefore, looking at the physical thing, you'll know exactly what's happening process-wise on the spiritual thing. You won't know exactly what, because obviously you don't fully get spirituality, but the process of the spiritual counterpart you'll recognize through the physical counterpart. It is a physical model. There are some concepts, though, that are completely non-graspable in this world. One of those concepts is this concept of making something from nothing. Number one on our level, and number two on a general level. On a general level, we do not get the concept that something just appears. We do not logically get how that can happen. And then on a specific level, we are the final step of the process. There's nothing, there's transferring it into something, and then there's something. We're that last step, and our step is not included the first two steps. So we don't have the concept of the first two steps, and we have nothing that can express those concepts 100%. We have nothing in this world that has the concept of nothing being made into something, because our concept is step number 3, just something. But nevertheless, God still wanted to show this concept in the world. But he also wanted to do it in a worldly way, in a way that it's relatable to the world. Therefore, he took our concept of the world slowly going to sleep, slowly calming down, and then restarting. And so too in the person, him slowly losing energy and then regaining energy as a constant process that happens on a daily basis, to show on the counterpart the constant process that happens every single moment of existence. That process is a process where the existence more like gets weaker and fades out of existence, and then has to be renewed. So too, in our example, in our world, the example for this is that the world in general, and every person individually, is slowing down, as if becoming less and less existent, and then get renewed at the beginning of the next day. Since this is a hint, this is an example of the concept of being constantly renewed, it also hints to the upcoming resurrection, which is the concept of being renewed. We explained in last episode that these explanations that we're giving are the second version. These explanations come from the fifth explanation. The fifth explanation was that this sentence we say the first thing in the morning touches upon the essence of our soul. It comes from the essence of our soul. We brought reasons for that over there. So check that episode to hear further explanation. How is this explanation specifically from the essence of the soul? I just understood it logically that it could be that this process in the world is an example of that, and you just understood it logically. The answer is, like we mentioned in the last episode and the first episode of this series, the perspective of the essence of the soul is different than every single other part of the soul and every single being in this world. The perspective of every single being in this world and all the other parts of the soul, all the lower parts of the soul, which have some sort of connection to this world, is the perspective of the world. The perspective of the world is that obviously it exists. It's like our perspective constantly. The world obviously exists. This concept that I explained today is the novelty. It's a novelty that our world does not constantly exist. It's a novelty that our world is constantly being made anew. Therefore, when we see the concept of waking up in the morning, we're biased and we immediately try to take the approach that it must be a natural thing. I'm not going to try to say that the world is not how I think it is. I'm not going to try to say that this shows that the world is renewed, because it's a mini version of that. I'm going to try to say that it fits with my foundational understanding, with my understanding that the world is constant. So even the lower parts of the soul itself will still see that perspective and still start off with that perspective, and then maybe explain to themselves the fact that since we know that the world is constantly renewed and that everything spiritually is shown and has an example in this physical world, so they can eventually lead to the explanation that we have stated today. The essence of the soul, on the other hand, has it in the purest form. Since it is connected to God himself, and since it is so separate from the world, like we explained that it cannot connect to our body in the state that it's in, therefore it sees stuff from the perspective of God. In God's perspective, this world should not be existing. This world has to be constantly renewed. So as soon as the essence of the soul sees in this world a concept, which could be hinting on that, meaning any concept which is losing energy and then regaining energy, having a renewal of energy, it will automatically say that must be showing on how the world is. That is an outcome of the world's whole process of existence. The fact that since it is something which is constantly losing energy and has to regain, there are things inside of it also which are losing energy and has to regain. And also because it knows this rule that everything spiritually tends to do physically, it'll be like, that is the example for this. That's why this explanation comes from the essence of the. What lesson can we learn from this? Although the bigger lesson will come at the end of the series, and we've brought a couple of amazing lessons in this series so far, the lesson we can take from this is from this concept that we're constantly being renewed, and the fact that we recognize that in the beginning of the day. The fact that we're constantly renewed means that God constantly, every single moment, makes the decision, you should exist. The world should exist. You have a purpose to me. So we wake up in the morning and we say this fundamental sentence, and at the end of this sentence, it hints to the concept of the upcoming redemption. Because we have a connection in waking up to the concept that we're constantly renewed, we can remember God created me today with a purpose. God created me every single moment with a purpose. He created me intentionally every single moment. And for that, I'm grateful. Thank you for joining us today. I wish you a wonderful, amazing rest of your day. And we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to share with a friend. Here at Jewish Life 101, we spend many hours on every single episode, and it's all with your support. Just click the link in the description to find out more, and we'll see you next time on Jewish Life 101.